Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm speaking today about real data in virtual worlds. I also teach at the New School for Public Engagement in New York, a big data consumer research course. So a lot of my thinking over the last few years around data visualization and data is now coming into immersive media. So to start, I thought this was a nice thought. Everything changes and nothing remains still. And you cannot step twice into the same stream. So I've been thinking a lot about data as a constant flow. Everything is constantly changing. We're swimming in yottabytes of data. We're building new data-driven systems that shape our physical world every day. We're designing data science and engineer teams to make sense of vast amounts of data that's exponentially growing. And we don't yet have the interfaces to allow us to really go with the flow. How we make sense of it all in the wake of virtual reality probes entirely new questions about real data in virtual worlds and the impact on our physical worlds. Data is the currency of the world we live in. Facebook is a data company. Google is a data company. Everything is data. It's our value system. We are data. We are the product. The entire currency of the internet is data. And it's all happening behind the scenes, behind 2D screens for the most part. It's like dark matter. Data is the dark matter of the digital universe. And we're at the tip of the iceberg. The vast majority is underneath. It's the bits we can't see. It's beyond our senses, especially as consumers of the internet. The digital universe and the physical universe can be thought of in similar ways. What we perceive is in both is a tiny fraction of what is happening out there, beyond the range of our limited senses. We use this crude information to construct our reality, whether it's data from the patterns of nature or from behavior of human connections. The nodes in the network interact at a deeper level of meaning, beauty, and truth than we can perceive. This is the DIKW rising pyramid, also known as the DIKW hierarchy or wisdom hierarchy, that stems from information science. And data here is the baseline, the raw material, or as William brought up to me, perhaps an oxymoron of raw data. I'll look into that. Data only becomes information when it's given context, really. And both of these things at the bottom of the pyramid are done really well by machines, machine intelligence, whereas the top half is human intelligence. So how do we go from data to wisdom? How do we make this leap? And wisdom is not in theory, it's in human consciousness. So we have to build interfaces to create and combine the power of the machine with the power of the humans that are using it. So we are here now. We've been here for quite a while. Most websites are designed like a brochure. If they were printed in hard copy and mailed to the user, little would be lost in terms of the experience. We've had the 2D screen and mouse for quite some time. And we're using these systems and designing and building with that in mind. We're training to think of things in 3D. When you're a filmmaker, you're trained to squeeze everything into the rectangle, the frame. With VR, you're thinking in 360. This is opening up new worlds, new ideas. Only when you have another option do you realize the previous system was essentially a prison creatively. So innovation happens when things that are separate get mixed. So what happens if we combine real data with immersive virtual reality environments? So at DataVise, we're thinking a lot about web VR and the immersive web. Where can that go? What about a web of spaces, shared human spaces, and experiences, where we're able to pull in real-time data? And the architecture of the internet is such that it's capable of so much more. So how can we build for the web of spaces in 3D, 360 immersive experiences and navigate the spatial web by various means, natural gestures, look-based interactions, using all of the existing devices at our fingertips? So I like to think of kind of the case for VR and real data in virtual worlds by thinking between 2D versus 3D. So most images are viewed, 3D images are viewed in 2D formats and displays, especially scientific visualization. that's locked in 2D. 3D viewing improves comprehension and decision making. 3D 360 experiences are natural to human users and triggers levels of cognition absent from 2D viewing environments. Spatialized environments have been shown to improve decision support, education, and in identifying patterns and outliers. And that's the human bit I think we bring into immersive environments. How much more data can we perceive in VR? Well, we're really just getting started. And what kind of data are we talking about? So it's data right now in the broadest sense. What is VR in VR? We're asking those questions. So in data capture, we're thinking about inside out and outside in with 360 3D cameras capturing the world around us with the user as the camera and navigating, and photogrammetry and scanning and capturing physical 3D objects and the hybrid of bringing those two together. We're thinking about what is human-centered design, what is emotional data in these environments, and what is creation of empathy or building empathy and autonomy or agency, and the dichotomy there, the tension that is kind of at play right now. We're also talking about multiple perspectives, point of view, asymmetrical designs, and multi-dimensional data in 360 environments and what that could look like. And really looking at kind of the disruption of human-computer interfaces and pushing human perception forward. And I think a lot of VR right now, we're also putting a lot of testing into, getting users into the experience, onboarding users into VR, and taking great care and attentiveness in that onboarding process, going into a virtual space, and perhaps then coming out of that in the real world. And this data can be kind of right now thinking a lot of things around geospatial, biomedical, civic, open data, the list goes on and on. And virtual reality is a wearable. It's, I think this is not simply a Fitbit and a headset that we're looking at. We're looking at all aspects of human physiological data, biometrics, what is our heart rate? Are we excited when we're in the experience? Are we apprehensive? All of the data that can now be kind of tracked in these experiences. And then the potential of aids such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, and really seeing the whole system as a feedback loop, kind of the responsiveness in real time. And I think William mentioned in his talk, responsive documentary, which I think is a very apt kind of term for that. Tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may not remember, involve me and I'll understand. Research shows that learning via VR is dramatically boosted because the user is being and doing rather than reading or remembering or being a passive observer. So what does data visualization in VR look like, sound like, feel like? Data visualization, for the most part, has kind of policed itself into aesthetics of charts and interactive graphs, interactive data visualization. And the process of visualized data is to ask better questions. So asking what immersive data visualization, especially the audio as well as visual component, what does data sound like? And thinking about complex multidimensional data that is updated in real time, that is over time, that can be expanded and potentially become better ways of exploring information and very complex information in a more intuitive way. I'd like to go in just briefly into my project information, which is in the exhibit here as well. And this was my VR, not just my VR directorial debut, but just directing as a whole. And I really thought a lot about, this idea of empathy and building, a shared experience and the potential of VR. So this was last year during Tribeca Film Festival for about 4 days. I interviewed a lot of the amazing pioneers that are here today with us, Karim Ben Khalifa, Nani de la Pena, James George, who directed Clouds documentary, Jacqueline Ford Maury, who was one of the VR pioneers and is currently writing the history of VR and was one of the first female filmmakers to show at a film festival in the 90s. So it turns out into two parts, a 25-minute piece, and the second part also dives into documenting installations at Tribeca. Kareem Ben Khalifa is the enemy, so we can actually see what the experience is like at the debut of the project at Storyscapes, and the machine to be another lab, which is embodied narratives and a kind of performance piece that the users swap, are able to actually feel oneself in the other's body. So it's a pretty profound experiment. And this shows a bit of kind of what we're looking at. How do people watch cinematic VR? So these are data visualizations that are showing these heat maps. So this is Nick Fortunga on your right from Playmatics, and thankfully no one's looking at me in 3D. So there's also a lot of interesting kind of data, not just between the interviews themselves and where people are looking and understanding more around the natural gestures, even with live action video, that brings people more into a sense of presence and immersion. But here, there's a B-roll footage, or B-roll interstitials with a project by Vincent Morissette, this piece called Way to Go in collaboration with the NFB, and getting a sense of primary and secondary footage and kind of these focal points of how you bring users into the scene. And here's one final one, which is Jackie Ford Marie's work, and getting a sense of moving image B-roll in these primary and secondary shots. And we also, I tested this with still images as well to kind of create these image galleries with Kareem's photojournalism work. So what can we do with data capture and virtual reality to solve the world's biggest problems? Build smarter cities, save lives. How can we advance human perception in this broader sense? So I'm really interested now in kind of looking at real-time data capture around humanitarian response and kind of disaster management and relief. So this was data from Patrick Meyer and the UAV network and Robotics with Pix4D that's capturing all this with UAVs and bringing that into a software environment. And this is Sketchfab. So we're beginning to understand, how can we take annotation in these 3D models in 2D display that you can then open up and view in VR and process this into a web VR environment. So it's completely open. And then we can take open data sets for real-time response. And you may have seen Brian Charles's data visualization for VR cities, which he developed while a technology fellow at POV. And this work really, I think, for me, was the first piece that I saw that showed the potential of immersive data visualization. And the first data set you saw was population data from the 2010 census, US Census. And these data sets are police injury claims. So the prototype, which was on GitHub, allowed you to go into both a bird's eye view of this data in VR, as well as a kind of street level. So really playing with different points of view and that cinematic approach to data visualization. And while this is historical data, census data, we can easily repurpose that for real-time data. And finally, this is, we're working in partnership with Yale School of Medicine, Cinema Microscopy Lab by Dr. Derek Tumra. And they are, have been taking all of the data around human cells and imaging that at the microscopy level and viewing that back on kind of Dell desktop 2D monitors with kind of off-the-shelf visualization software and doing all the research and annotation in that process as well. So we're looking at how can we explore data research and exploration, data explanation, collaboration, and annotation in VR, and open that up for both a research purpose and utility, as well as using the same model to educate and inspire the public. So I think through a lot of that we can take discoveries and delight audiences by looking at the nanoscale as well as the kind of macro scale of data. So there's just some thoughts around what real world data could be in VR, and I look forward to all your ideas that may come out of it. Thank you.